Welcome back to another episode of When It Matters. I am here with the wonderful Amanda Watts and Sunil Purohit. It's amazing to have you both on the pod. Feels like a long time coming, and here we are at last. So, do you want to start perhaps with some introductions of your background and yeah?
Yeah, perfect. So, as you said, my name's Amanda C. Watts. C is for branding. So,
Oh,
if you Google Amanda
okay.
Watts, then I don't know if it's still there, but serial killer in Australia and a lady in America that tried to sell golden tickets to heaven. So, when I got married and had to change my name, I had to find a way to stand out. So that's why the C is there for branding reasons. Just that's why I'm like quite pedantic about it. Like it's not Amanda Watts, it's Amanda C. Watts. So yeah, so there's a little story for you. And I specialize in working with accountants and bookkeepers and advisors to help them create, sell, and deliver a world class advisory package. So that's what I do.
And Sunil?
And I'm Sunil Purohit. I don't have a middle initial unless there's a serial killer with my
Yeah,
name that,
absolutely. I'm
that I
going to
need
Google that one.
to look up. But I'm a chartered accountant. Many years ago, I trained with one of the big four, PwC. But actually, after the initial training in audit, I've spent the vast majority of my career as a CFO with tech scale-ups and startups. So doing mainly advisory stuff. I probably spend less time. The core is financial and fundraising,
Mm,
strategy, exits, etc. But yeah, it's more advisory than anything else. So I've been
amazing.
through a number of exits, obviously helping to raise money, scale operations, and ultimately sell a business. So yeah, so
Yeah.
looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
Yeah, well, we're gonna dive deep into all things startup and fundraising a little bit. I also, do you know, it's funny when I was googling you, Amanda. There's also, I think, an Olympic medalist called
Oh,
Amanda Watts.
really?
And I was like, oh my goodness, is this woman not
No,
only
it's
an
not me.
award-winning
No, not at all.
advisor?
I've worked with accountants and bookkeepers for years. I have not done anything with the Olympics. That's hilarious.
And obviously, so both of you have got these corporate backgrounds,
Yeah.
and now you have your own advisory and fractional CFO practices. What was it that triggered you guys setting up these respective businesses?
You go
What's
first.
the story?
To be honest, for me, it was always, I guess, two elements. One is I've always been quite entrepreneurial, and maybe we'll cover some of that.
Mm.
Maybe we'll cover it now, actually. I was probably the only accountant at PwC who started off as a street market trader and a motor mechanic, which was pretty unusual. So I think I've always been quite entrepreneurial. But actually, the other thing, and the real driver, more serious answer to your question, is I found when I was working in corporates as a full time CFO, it felt to me like I was being put in that role as much of as an insurance policy for the investors as anything else. So I felt that often I was doing work that didn't necessarily stimulate me in the way that I like to be stimulated. So when I came to that realization, then it felt that doing project based work seemed to be the natural thing. So it's a lot more challenging because juggling half a dozen different clients, all of whom see their pet topic or pet project as the key thing, is it means that you've got to work at a much higher
Mm.
level.
Mm.
But I actually find that much more interesting and rewarding as well.
Mm.
So yeah.
That's interesting. Do you think sometimes traditionally, or perhaps in the past, the CFO role has felt, or the fractional CFO roles has felt quite symbolic almost, that it's, as you say, it's more of an insurance policy than anything, rather than yeah,
I
and
mean, to be
that's
honest, I think if you talk to most venture capital investors, there's a pretty standard playbook. As soon as they invest a significant amount of money in a business, the two things they do is appoint a non-exec chair and appoint a CFO. Now, the
Mm.
chair is there to help guide the founder. And I think, me being maybe slightly cynical, the CFO's there to help them feel a little bit more comfortable about
Mm.
the £3 million check they've just
Yes.
typically written. So, yeah.
Yeah.
interesting.
So I actually got into the advisory world because I broke the accounting world. Okay. So basically, what happened was 10 years ago, my dad turned around to me and he said, I'm retiring. He's a tax technician. And he said, I'm retiring. Amanda, can you go and help accountants to grow their businesses? He got made redundant from the Big Four back in the 90s. It was quite horrendous. And he set up his own tax technician firm. He bought into a franchise that didn't work. And the reason why it didn't work is because he struggled to get clients. Now, my background is the corporate background, as you say, and I was very heavily involved in event marketing and understanding branding, all that kind of thing. So when he said to me, "Can you go and help accountants?" I was like, I'm not sure if they'll cope with me, to be honest. It's like I have quite a personality. And he said, no, give it a go. And actually, because Dad and I are so close, and he is your traditional accountant, like if you put him in a box with another 10 accountants from the 90s, you wouldn't tell him any different from any of the others, right? So I started working with accountants, and even if I do say so myself, it sounds egotistical and I don't mean it that way, but I am really good at marketing. And I showed my clients how to do marketing. So when COVID hit, I was working with about 300 accountants and bookkeepers, mainly from the UK, and the majority of them did really well. And what we did is we ended up building lots of what I call monster businesses. So monster businesses is a compliant-based business with hundreds of clients, not charging very much for the compliance work, having to get a big team to service those clients. And I ended up breaking my clients because they were onboarding 2 clients a week, 3 clients a week with compliance work, and they just grew really fast. And I was like, I turned around and I was like, oh my gosh, it sounds awful, but whilst I was working with them, 3 of my clients had heart attacks.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's because I'd shown them how to achieve what they wanted. And it goes back to the Henry Ford quote of, if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said they wanted a faster horse. And after one of my clients who I was very fond of was very ill and had to give up working, I can't keep doing this. Now, my experience with accountants and bookkeepers is so great that I didn't want to give up working with them, but I wanted to help them have what I have. And I have what I call a freedom business, where I do about 10 hours client work a week. I earn good money. I have excellent take home, and there's a lot of freedom. And I started helping a couple of my clients implement my kind of business as like a side hustle, and it worked really well. And I was like, well, business advisory is the same as business coaching and business consultancy. It's just a change of word. And that's when I was like, do you know what? I can do this. I can be the person that shows them how to have a freedom business and how to stop selling compliance cheaply and position themselves and package themselves in a way where they can offer advisory. And I kind of put myself down as their cheerleader, but I teach them how to do advisory, but mostly give them the confidence to do advisory. So I've stumbled into this because I kind of helped the profession with what they wanted and actually destroyed a lot of people in the process because they don't want more compliance clients. It's not the answer. It's not the answer to their freedom. It might be the answer for a traditional accountancy firm, but it's not the answer to their freedom. So that's when, so about 4 or 5 years ago, I started helping them with advisory. And then a couple of years ago, I set up the Business Advisor Academy, where we certify you as an advisor. So you go through a process to build your confidence and learn how to do advisory. So yeah, so it's not actually a happy story. It's a horrible story, to be honest. But I'm kind of making up for it now and changing their lives for good now, rather than just giving them more clients.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah, but it's sad. It is sad. And it's sad that so many people think that the answer is chasing more clients, but it's not. Yeah.
No, I'd agree with that. I mean, I have friends who've stayed in the profession, and that monster practice that you're just describing, to me, it just seems like a job from hell, because you have very little engagement with the clients. So yes, you have lots of clients, but frankly, they're not really engaging with you other than when they need their accounts filed or VAT returns or whatever. But just, I describe it as, you're helping them deal with the brown envelopes. Now, the problem is, in that world, a brown envelope for most people is associated with stress and pain. So it's not a positive association. I mean, if I get a letter from HMRC, it's not the first thing that I open, it's probably the last.
Yeah.
But the reality is, that's what most accountants do. And they do it, I think, because it's what they're trained to do. So it's familiar, it's sort of it's also very black and white, isn't
Yes,
it?
it's
Because
safe.
it's safe. You know how to produce a set of accounts. You know how to do a self-assessment return, etc., etc. And it can feel daunting to get into a more grey or a sort of a slightly more, sort of wider spectrum of skills that you think you might need. But as you said, Amanda, I think if you can just open the idea that advisory could be the way to actually having a better quality of
Yeah.
life, right? Because
Yeah.
nobody wants to spend their whole week just doing tax
No.
returns or corporation tax. But if you can change the lives of the people that you're advising, which
Yeah.
you genuinely can, I think not only is it more rewarding financially, it's actually more rewarding in all other ways, because we all like to help people.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I always think, and my wife's a head teacher, and whenever she comes across a pupil who's now grown up and doing well, they'll often say, "Oh, you were the person who inspired me to do X, Y, and Z." And I think actually accountants have that similar potential
Yes.
to be life-changing catalysts, agents of change, if only they can actually see the potential that they have. And of course, that also takes a little bit of a leap of faith into something you're not comfortable. But actually, once you do it, it's not that big a leap that you might think. Because you're already equipped, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but you're already equipped with the tools.
I was going to say they're doing it for free already.
Yeah,
That's
well,
it.
absolutely.
They give it away for free. And I remember I must have been about 15, 16, and Dad was doing a personal tax return. And I remember walking into his office at home, and I said to him, probably quite rudely, "How much do you get paid for that?" And he said, "Oh, £140 a tax return." I was like, "Oh my gosh, we must be so rich having, And I said, "How long did it take you?" He says, "Oh, about 4 minutes." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is such an amazing career to have." But that was 30 years ago, or more. So now the price hasn't changed. They're still charging the same amount. The world has completely changed. When we were buying houses back then, you'd have 4 times your annual salary, and if you worked then, you'd get like 15 grand a year or whatever, and you'd be able to buy a house on it. But you can't now. The salary isn't there. And what used to be a very well respected profession, people don't respect it in the same way. It's not the career that it used to be. And it just breaks my heart, completely breaks my heart. And then you end up creating this monster business, and you're not making an impact on the world. You're working for HMRC, not your clients, most of the time. And that's because you have to be compliant. You can't do anything dodgy, which is right. You shouldn't do anything dodgy, but that doesn't give you the opportunity to make an impact. That just ticks boxes, doesn't it? Yeah. So it's heartbreaking, really.
And the reality is nobody goes into business, being excited by all the compliance stuff.
No.
So being associated with the least interesting aspect of running a business isn't really setting yourself up for success.
No, exactly.
But everybody wants to grow their business. Everybody wants to use the business as a life-changing event. And I think accountants have that unique opportunity to play that role.
Yeah.
If they can, get the confidence to sort of adopt and take that role on. I mean, the other thing I would say, Amanda, is I think often in business, the advisory thing, I think, as you said, it can be sort of, it can mean so much to so many people, but the reality is, the way I look at it is, as an accountant, you have a unique exposure to lots of businesses, whatever type of business you deal with, whether it's a particular geography, so you're based as a local accountant in an area, or whether you've developed a specialism, so you're the accountant for dentists or whatever. But that experience gives you a very unique opportunity to do something which I think is amazing, and that simply is that you can sound like a very wise person by just actually relying on the pattern recognition. Yes. So any problem anybody has, if you really reflect on it, the chances are at least one, probably half a dozen of your other clients have had a similar problem. So what can sound like an insightful and sage comment from you is actually just based on the experience you already have. So just confidence is the key word, I think, here.
Yeah, 100%. I think that leads beautifully on to when I talk about the 3 kind of conversations that an advisor can have. And a lot of the time, one is scared to give advice, right? And I think that the word advisor can be the wrong word, because they're not expected to have all the answers. As a business owner, we don't turn to our business coaches or our advisors, expecting them to tell us what to do. We're asking them to keep us accountable, to help us, support us, and most importantly, ask the right questions. So there's three conversations that I think an advisor should have. I think they should have the future conversation with the businesses, which is things like, what do you want your business to look like in 5-10 years? Do you want to exit it? Do you want to stay in it? Do you want to keep it small? Do you want to grow it? Because not all businesses are cookie cutter, right? They all depend on the business owner. So it's the future question of setting goals. Then you've got the strategy question. So the strategy way of having conversations is, well, how are we going to reach that future? What is the things that we need? And that's just asking questions. The accountant doesn't need to know the answers to that question. They've got to be able to ask the expert in their business, which would be the person in the construction business, how would you like to reach that strategy? Well, actually, I want to build my team, or I want to have more outlets, that kind of thing. Those questions will open up the conversations that will give the answers. And then the one that they've got covered already is the money conversation. So the money conversation they can have with their eyes closed because they're used to having that. So really, all advisory is have the money conversation around your Xero or your QuickBooks or whatever platform you use. Look at the insights, look what makes money, what doesn't. Secondly, go, what is it that you'd like to achieve in the next 5-10 years? Okay, this is what you want to achieve. Let's put together a strategy, and then let's find the partners that can help you then implement that. So if you need to raise money, here's a person to raise money. If you need help with marketing, here's a person that can help you with marketing. They don't have to do the work. And that's what I think really scares them.
Yeah,
that's where
absolutely.
the fear comes from. And I almost want to say, all you've got to do is learn how to ask questions.
I think 100% I'd agree with that. I don't think people are looking to their accountant for the complete solution and
Exactly.
answer to every question.
Yeah.
What they're looking for, I think, is a safe place to be able to have a conversation where they can, I guess, in a structured way, deal with the problems that are probably otherwise just running around in their head, right? Because it's quite lonely being in business, and then it's quite difficult to know who you share those challenges that all business people have. Now, whether you're successful in business or whether you're struggling, the one thing is guaranteed: you have many challenges and you've got limited resources. And I think accountants are in an ideal place, and as we say, they don't need to have all the answers. They just need to be the person that enables that business person to have a safe conversation in a safe environment with no judgment. And that's very rare. I mean, if you've taken on, for example, investment from a venture capital fund and you're a business owner, of course you can talk to those investors about the challenges you face. But how many times will you really have an honest conversation about all the things that are worrying you if you don't have an answer? And the best way you're going to develop that answer is to be able to brainstorm with somebody else who knows all the facts.
Yeah.
So you're not wasting time having to brief them, and can bring some objectivity, because they're not, of course, they're advising you and they're wanting the best for you, but they're not. They don't have a vested interest in terms of carrying a sales target, or they've invested in your business or whatever. So for me, it's the perfect sort of person to be able to bounce ideas off until you come up with the right answers or the right range of answers. That's what I think a good accountant can bring.
And more so than a business coach.
Absolutely, yeah.
If we think 50% of businesses go out of business in the first 5 years, what are we missing? We're missing accountants stepping up, because they've got the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And if it was working, we wouldn't need accountants to step up, but we do, and the world is crying for this advice. If we can even take that down to 40% of businesses fail because the accountants are stepping up, then we're laughing. Then we're really making that impact. And we were at lunchtime, we were talking, weren't we, about how the world has changed so much. We're lacking connection, we're lacking community, we don't know who to speak to. We don't even have Bob down the pub to talk to anymore, because we don't go down the pub anymore. So we should have the accountant.
Yeah, I feel like the two of you really, whilst you were talking, I was thinking you guys really epitomise the whole reason we set up this podcast. The fact that accountants and fractional CFOs and bookkeepers are such sources of wisdom and knowledge. You guys see everything. The numbers don't lie. And I think we had a podcast with David Addison from Utopia, and he was saying how probably like 20% of his conversations with his customers are about numbers. That, as you're saying, he's just being a sounding board. And it, it sounds like a no-brainer, right, to kind of become a business advisor and sort of step up in that way. And it's like, we really need it. So if I'm an accountant and I've had my practice for a couple of years, things are going fine. Um, when how do you know you're ready for this next step? And are you probably always ready, but you just don't know it? It's like, how would you kind of describe that transition and knowing when it's the right time to make it?
Well, I mean, I'm sure Amanda's got much more powerful insights than me on this, but from my perspective, if I were that accountant,
Mm,
I would probably start with reviewing my client list, and I would probably start to be honest with myself and say, who do I really enjoy working with? Who, if I'm honest, I don't enjoy so much, but it's, these are fees that I can ill afford to lose. Now, then reflect on what it is that makes you enjoy the clients you work with. And if you think on that, you'll probably find that you have a certain common way of working with those people. They probably share certain common traits. And actually, most of those traits will probably be the things that lead to an advisory type relationship. So I'll give you an example. Probably the good clients aren't the ones who are moaning about the fees. Can you
mm,
reduce the fees? Do I have to pay them now, etc.? The good clients are also the ones who are just taking for granted that the numbers are a starting point, but they're starting to get you involved in talking about their future plans without you even necessarily asking. Um, and the good clients are actually asking you, what do you think about this? Now, obviously, the not so good clients are the opposite of that, right? So to me, that's really the answer to your question is reflect on the monster client base that you
Mhm.
have, work out what the top 10% have in common, and then the next step is to work out how you're going to replicate more of those top 10% and just gradually start, um, can we put it, encourage to leave the less sort of clients you enjoy spending less time with. And it's easily done. You can introduce them to other colleagues in the profession who want that type of client base. So there shouldn't be any awkward conversation. I think, I would just say, look, we're strategically focusing on a different type of client. My feeling is that you would be better served by a good colleague of mine who I can introduce you to. And actually, I have seen those sorts of conversations in the past, and most people are very happy with that.
Yeah. Grateful, even.
Grateful, even,
Yeah,
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 yeah.
absolutely. So I'll run with what you've said because I think that that's absolutely the first thing. And I'll go back to something else that you said where we were talking about the thing that stops accountants and bookkeepers and CFOs more than anything is fear about whether they can do it.
mm,
So once you're clear on your ideal client, you then need to put together some frameworks so that I talk about it being like tools in your bat belt. I'm a bit geeky when it comes to things like that. So you need a bat belt so that when a client has a question, you can go, oh, do you know what? I've got a framework for that. I know how to help you. The framework can be easily, I've got a framework to advise you on how to get help from somebody else. It doesn't have to be, I've got a framework for the answers, but putting together a framework where once you understand your ideal client, where they are, where they want to be, and the process that they have to go to, which you will have done hundreds of times for free.
mm,
So now what we have to do, I call it unpacking your intellectual property. So it's your experience, it's your education, and the essence of you. So the way that you advise would be different from how I advise, and the way that you advise are. And the reason why it's different is because we all have different essence, but we could be doing exactly the same ACCA or ICAEW certifications, but we are all completely different and we advise in different ways. So we have to work out how we advise and what we advise on so that we feel safe and secure taking that to market. Because for years, all the profession has done is tick boxes and make sure books balance. So having to have a conversation and say, can I have money for my advice is super scary. So you have to uncover why you're so awesome. So who's your ideal client? Then uncover why you're so great at what you do, and then take that to market when you're like, oh wow, I am valuable. Because the biggest problem is they don't believe in themselves. Yeah.
which is staggering, really.
I know.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
non-accountant, it's just like the person I've looked up to my entire life is my father. Like
Mm,
literally, we call him Google. He has the answer to everything, although he probably doesn't. But we've always thought of him that way, and that's because he's so good. Like even when I was 18, it's like, Dad, I'm going to get a credit card. I don't think you are, young lady. You know, it's that kind of thing, and that comes from the experience and the education and who he is. And I wish that he could be an advisor. He's now 75 and doesn't want to touch any of it. But there's so much that the profession has inside of it, and it's fear and lack of confidence that stops everyone from stepping up. And I just want to say that they can do it, and you've got it all in your brain. We just need to get it out of your brain so that you can see it and you can see the value.
Yeah. And I guess if you're, if you've got, if you're quite a high touch point with your clients and you're talking to them regularly, and you find yourself offering your opinion and advice on things that perhaps aren't even numbers related, is that a clear sign that you're basically doing the role already and it's time to formalize it?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if your client is asking you for advice, quite literally asking you for your advice on things that aren't to do with their year-end tax, then you're already acting as an advisor. You just probably don't realize that. So.
Yeah.
It comes back to the word trusted advisor,
Trusted advisor, yeah.
which has been branded about for years before I even joined the profession, and people have decided that they don't like that word. But without trust, you can't move your clients. So if my clients don't trust me, I don't work very well with them. And they don't work very well with me because they question everything I say. The ones that believe in everything that comes out of my mouth, we get massive results for, because they'll go, okay, Amanda, that's fine, I'll do that. And that's what we need your clients to do and the advisor's clients to do, because they've got to trust us. So trusted advisor isn't the wrong word. It's just that the professions decide they don't like it very much.
Well, actually, I mean, I'd build on that. I think the profession has a unique opportunity to become that trusted advisor, because anybody who's providing a service, that's probably what they aspire to as a coach or whatever. And actually very few of them are able to do that. And one of the reasons why accountants are able, I think, to do it and have that opportunity is there's a guy I worked with many years ago. I mean, this was in industry, and it was a recruitment business, which when he then started his own recruitment business, there must have been at least half a dozen business breakfasts that he invited me to talk about some sort of corporate finance thing, whether he was raising money or somebody. And then after about half a dozen of these, I said, look, I'm very happy to have all these free breakfasts and whatever as a friend, but surely you have an accountant, who you can talk to. And he just said, well, he doesn't seem to get things in the way that you do. And actually, frankly, whenever I speak to you, what I like is the fact that you don't have a vested interest. You genuinely seem to have my best interests at heart, and so I can trust the advice that's coming. And I think accountants have that opportunity, because most business people are craving that type of input, and they're not getting it.
Yeah, massively. For any accountant or bookkeeper who's thinking, okay, this sounds great, this sounds like something I want to formalize and work towards, do you think it's important for these individuals to be well connected outside of finance, in the sense that, for example, if marketing something that the business they're advising on is struggling with, or fundraising, do you think it's not a requirement but important that they have this kind of roster of people to go to, or do you think that's actually not necessary, and people looping in people via LinkedIn or going to conferences? What's your take on that?
I think, first of all, we need to say that if they're going to be the trusted advisor, they don't need hundreds of clients, they need 20 clients.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Which means that whilst it's good to be on LinkedIn and do social media and have a podcast and be on YouTube, I think that they're really good for credibility and to build trust. But you actually only need to have 100 conversations to get 20 clients. And conversations are easy if you're confident in what you're selling. So you need to get confident in what you're selling and then just go and talk to people. So connections are really important. Don't get me wrong. It is a relationship business because you have to build that trust, but you do not have to be an influencer. You don't have to have millions of people on your LinkedIn. I don't have millions of people on my LinkedIn. We were talking about our social media at lunchtime, and I don't get hundreds of likes, but I've built a very successful business by having conversations with people. And that's the key thing. And I'm here today because we know each other, and we've had conversations, but you can't get clients without conversations, and you don't need that many conversations to get 20 clients.
That's so true. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I'd say were two observations. One is the analogy with your GP is probably a good one. You don't go to your GP because they're going to fix every ailment you can ever talk. That they're going to signpost you to the relevant experts. So I don't think, even if you don't have access to those experts, it's a big issue, because your client isn't expecting an answer, or immediately for you to get out your, I was going to show my age and say Rolodex, but whatever it is, right?
I know exactly what it is.
But they don't necessarily expect that,
Yeah.
and so don't feel stressed. Having said that, I think it's a good practice, both for networking and just generally, to reflect on your 20 clients, for example, and think, what are the common things that they would have where they would need some sort of external advice, which I wouldn't be able to offer. So, for example, there'll be an IFA, so advising on pensions and investments and things. There'll be probably HR, marketing, etc. And I think if you actually build some contacts with people with that expertise, that it'll be a mutual beneficial thing anyway, because those people will also be talking to clients that you would probably find interesting to have. So just slowly build up that small list, and it doesn't need to be a big list. It's probably half a dozen of those core things, so that when clients say, I'm not happy with my marketing, what do you think, you can offer a suggestion without necessarily them having to take it. But they're not looking to you for marketing expertise, so if you don't have that, you can just say, I don't know anybody at the moment, but I'll reflect on it. And but I do think that sort of widening your network with related sort of complementary professionals is a good thing, because it'll be good for business development, but it'll also be good for you to be then over time getting that credibility as the person to signpost to the right expertise.
And there's nothing to stop you from teaming up with an IFA and an HR person and a marketing person, and actually creating an advisory offering that includes all of that.
Yeah.
So if you understand your ideal client and everything that's going on in their life, and if they need these 5 key advisors, then build yourself a pod of those advisors and sell it as a big package so that they get everybody under one roof. Because the world is becoming full of contractors. We're not hiring in-house anymore. Costs are so high that if we have a contractor for HR and a contractor for marketing and an accounting contractor that's also an advisor, and they all talk and they are all working and looking at this goal that they've set and helping these businesses achieve, they're going to get great results working as a team. So it's like building the Avengers. Just to go back and say.
But just on that, actually, Amanda, you've sort of sparked a thought. It actually presents a great opportunity to carve the type of job you want as well, right? Because what I would do is I would just reflect on all the things that clients need, then think about which of those things do I feel I enjoy the most. So for some of us, it's fundraising. Others, it might be strategy. I dare say there are some people who like nothing better than filling in a tax return. That's not me. But if you reflect on what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, then you can find the relevant subcontractors or partners that you can work with who can do the other stuff. And again, I think that's part of developing that sort of freedom practice that you're talking about.
And I think when it comes to actually getting really good as an advisor, if you have to be all things to all people, you're going to still be a jack of all trades. Whereas if you can achieve mastery, which is commonly known as 10,000 hours doing one thing, and you are really good at asking the questions and signposting where to go, then you're going to become the best advisor out there for a certain kind of client, and they're going to pay you good money for that. And you're going to be at the top of your game because you can get better and better and better at it and study it rather than being all things for all people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And again, that's such an important reminder for anyone who's feeling intimidated about stepping from accountancy into advisor. You do not have to be good at everything.
Not at all.
At all.
No, not at all. And if the numbers are your thing, then get really good at talking around the numbers.
Make some lovely friends in other areas and build your roster. And I'm always particularly interested in this at the moment because we've got this kind of increasing prevalence of sort of solo entrepreneurs. And I actually was reading an article the other day about how like half of all UK adults are thinking of setting up a business in 2025, which is kind of astounding. And when you've got this landscape where you can use Replit or Lovable, all this kind of rhetoric about not needing a CTO, whether that is or isn't true. So the advisory, the business advisor and the kind of advisory panel roster is really coming into its own. So can we talk a little bit about how these advisors impact the UK economy in general, the business landscape at large, and perhaps why now, particularly, it's a very relevant time.
Okay, so there's so many sides to this.
Mm.
The one thing I'd like to just bring up is that the guy who invented ChatGPT, and his name's gone out of my head at the moment, he said that by 2030 you will find your first $1 billion solo practitioner business. Okay, which is phenomenal.
Mind blowing.
Mind blowing. I play a slightly smaller game. I don't want to play that game. That stinks of effort, even for one person, right? I play the 500, 200, 10 game. So I'm not the kind of person that says you need £1 million business, because that revenue business I have seen easily created with the monster business, which I don't agree with anymore, having seen how awful that is. So the 500, 200, 10 is 500k in advisory revenue, 200 take home after tax, which means that your costs need to be about 140,000, and that's very doable now if you're running a sole practitioner advisory firm, or if you're offshoring and outsourcing the compliance side. So I'm not saying scrap being an accountant at all. I'm just saying that there are smart ways to build an advisory led firm. And then the 10 of that is 10 hours a week in client delivery, because the truth is, oh, I sound like ChatGPT, doesn't I? The truth is that actually, if you are going to work 10 hours a week with clients, you're going to have to do some kind of marketing or conversation holding or community building to get clients that are going to pay you enough so that you can have that kind of revenue. So you're going to be spending 50% of your time focusing on marketing and working on the business, but you're going to have the time to do it because you're only going to be delivering for 10 hours a week. So that's from the advisor's point of view. Is it's going to be really easy for you to run a sole practitioner business. I do it. I have a really successful business. I do have a few contractors to help me, but it's really easy. The other thing is that if we have these millions of small businesses, they are going to be walking around going, someone please help, because someone told me I could do this and I've never done it before. And who's in the best place to do it than the trusted advisor that we've been talking about? So from both sides, it's really easy for the accountant to have some really nice high profit, take home, live your life now rather than wait for retirement. And it's really important for the economy. Businesses, if we're going to have that many new businesses, it's the amount of people going out of business is going to be even higher than it is now, because we're going to have that rush, aren't we? So it's really important that the trusted advisor steps up. And it's a great opportunity from both sides, in my opinion.
No, I mean, I completely agree with that. And if you look at it from both sides, that there was, I read recently that somebody made a comment, which I found difficult to believe, but then it made sense. And the comment was that in the next 4 years, we'll see as much change as we've seen in the previous 100 years.
That's right.
So, and you know, as human beings, generally speaking, we're not very good at change. I mean, most people don't like change. But if that is the case, and we're seeing it, right? So how many people were talking about AI 4 years ago, for example? So there's no doubt that the pace of change is going to be at that sort of level. And of course, we know from basic evolution that the survival of the fittest is about adaptability. So I think change is inevitable. I think there's an American general quote, isn't there, about if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less, you know, and it's basically you have to adapt. So I'm not surprised that lots of people are thinking about the side hustle, because it may end up having to be their main hustle, right? Because of change. And of course, the other thing we're seeing in society generally, and we were talking about this at lunch, that there's not the social contract where you could join a big FTSE 100 business and know that, you know, from cradle to grave, effectively, you know, you're sorted. So you do have to take that sort of responsibility for your own career. So I think definitely we'll see more of that, and obviously technology in terms of being able to launch apps on these low code, no code platforms, being able to bring some idea to reality much quicker than you would in the past. All these things are, you know, the genie's out and we're not going to be able to put it back in. So that's an opportunity. It actually creates a huge opportunity for the accountants as well, though, because most of those people who've launched a side hustle need reassurance, need support, need guidance, because they've probably not run a business before. And as we've said, the accountant is ideally placed. Now, I think the specific opportunity it creates for particular accountants is to be able to say, in professional services, I think the holy grail is when you can provide a one-to-many service, right? So if you're able to get a room full of people and give them the same advice, then common sense tells you that your fees will be higher than giving 30 different people 30 different bits of advice,
100%.
right? So this opportunity that we're talking about with solopreneurs or whatever is great for accountants, because an accountant can say, look, if you're thinking about launching the side hustle, which may become the game-changing main hustle, I've got a plan. And I think we alluded to this earlier, that people like the idea that you have a methodology, right? So if you're going from A to B, generally you have a map that you follow, right? It's not just a random walk that takes in interesting sights. And if you're relying on a taxi driver who seems to be taking this random walk or random drive, it's not going to instill confidence. So you have to have a roadmap and a route and a methodology. And in this brave new world, I mean, accountants have that opportunity to say, and guess what? You can launch that side hustle and I will help you, because I can take you from where you are today to where you want to be in the future by essentially following this agreed framework. Now, once they've bought into that, it's a pretty small step to say, and part of that is if you join my, whatever you want to call it, really, if you join my group, my catalyst group for 20 ambitious entrepreneurs, every Monday we're going to, brainstorm all the issues that are on our minds, and we're going to come up with the answers. You will very rapidly develop the one-to-many model and an advisory practice and move away from filling in people's tax returns.
And my clients do that. That's exactly what my clients do. We have this thing called office hours. And Helen, at the moment, she is blown away by how many people are interested. She literally launched her advisory offering a few weeks ago, and she's having a conversation with people saying, I'm thinking of introducing office hours where we all get together once a week and we talk through some of the business problems that we're having. And they're just falling off their chair, desperate for her help. And she's a bookkeeper, and she has gone, I'm going to help you. And it's amazing because A, she charges more for it. B, she's giving more for what she's charging. The value's gone through the roof. And she's acting as the Sherpa, like the Sherpa that takes you up Everest. And she's the guide. She's not having to, know the answers to everything, but she knows enough to guide you to hit your goals. And it's amazing.
And just on that, Amanda, you're right, because it's reminded me, I've seen the model work where, and this is good news for accountants, because it's essentially, something like Founders Forum or whatever you want to call it, where you just say, you bring your problem and other people will tell you about how they've dealt with that problem. So you become a facilitator and the catalyst for that solution to emerge. So you don't actually even need to have the expertise. You just need to be the person to bring the people together.
And that's what I did on Friday. We had our client event on Friday, and it worked in a whole day. And I had 30 of my clients in the room, I think, just in a place up in London Bridge. And for the first 2 hours, I taught a bit. So I taught about how to show up with your brand archetype. Then after lunch, I had a guest speaker, and he had everyone singing. It was amazing, right? Literally, can you imagine 30 accountants singing in the room? It was so fantastic. It was all about them finding their voice. I didn't have to show up and do that. He was doing that. It was absolutely amazing. And then in the last session, they masterminded exactly what you just said. So I split them all into groups of 5, and you have 3 things that you do. First of all, you write down and brain dump what your challenges are at the moment. Then from that, you then discover a question. So you brain dump your problems, and you go, right, what is the actual question I want to ask the other 4 people on this table? You get clear on that, and then you go around the room, and every person has 10 minutes where the other 4 people go, you should try this, you should try that, let's help you get clarity, give ideas, and everyone walks away with a transformation. And I haven't had to do any of that. That's the bit where I get to sit outside and have a cup of tea. It's amazing. And I'm the facilitator of it. So we had some really great breakthroughs. And when I went round the room and said, what's your favorite bit? Everyone says the masterminding. So if the accountants are happy to mastermind with other accountants, why would their clients not be happy to mastermind with their other clients?
Absolutely.
It's phenomenal. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's a really important thing. And it's not traditional advisory as
No.
people imagine it. I
And
call it
it's not
leveraged
daunting,
advisory.
is it?
No,
Because
it's not.
nobody's looking to you for the answer.
No,
You're just
you're the facilitator.
facilitating.
But as a facilitator, they're like, I'm so grateful that you did that. Thank you. And they'll pay you for it.
Honestly, I think every working professional should be in some sort of community
Absolutely.
like that.
Yeah,
like
100%.
a Discord or something.
Yeah,
organised like that.
absolutely. I think there's a lot of power in the room being in person. If you think about where we're sat today in the room in person, if we'd done this over Zoom, it would be a slightly different conversation. But the energy that you get from people, the energy that I'm getting from you, Sunil, the energy that I'm getting from you, it's helping us craft something that is powerful as opposed to sitting and having a chit chat. So I think there's a lot to be said for being in the room and taking time out of your business and being around people that inspire you and motivate you and keep you accountable. I think that's so powerful.
I mean, one other thought that it sparked is some of this is already happening, but not in a good way. You know, you can do it better. So virtually every area you would go to, there's some sort of business networking. So I'm not going to mention any particular organizations, but generally speaking, you know, these things are sort of breakfast based, and it's all about, you know, referrals for the group.
Yes.
And anybody who's witnessed that happening wouldn't regard it as this sort of brainstorming mastermind session that we're talking about here. So if I were that accountant, I would be looking to create my alternative mastermind group, which can be over breakfast, can be lunch, can be evening, whatever. But the idea being that you're the facilitator for networking and helping people come up with the answers to the problems that they're grappling with. And I think that's a great opportunity, because then you're the person that people will remember and associate that with. And you see, I firmly believe that it's sort of maybe slightly old-fashioned, but it's about building relationships. It's about delivering value without necessarily always expecting something in return, and then let nature take its course. Because if you do those things, if you help people, human nature is that they'll want to help you, and they'll remember you at the time when somebody else says, do you know anybody who might be able to help me with this? So it's good business basically in every way.
Absolutely. And we're missing connection so much. We are desperate for connection. We don't even touch anymore. Like we don't even say that. We don't shake hands anymore. The way that we used to be years ago has kind of eroded away. I don't think I shook hands when I saw you. I don't think so. Thinking about that's awful. But it's like that kind of thing
And
now.
I was offended, Amanda.
Yeah, please be if I've offended myself in the process. You know, but that's the kind of thing, right? That just, it's not cricket. That's the way the world has changed, and we're actually craving it. And we were talking about COVID at lunchtime and how that changed everything. And like, my children do not leave the house like we did many moons ago, because they're not in the habit of it. And business owners do not leave the house. They all work from their little spare room or their bedroom if they haven't got a spare room. And we live very isolated lives. So to get out and mastermind with people is just exactly what the world needs. It really is.
I love that. And I think if you are an accountant, you're looking to take that step into becoming a business advisor, is this perhaps the first thing you could do? I mean, well, firstly, signing up for the academy, but secondly,
absolutely, yeah. Second thing that you can do is I'll teach you how to do it, because that's what we do. We do teach you how to do masterminds.
Yeah.
So
and get your customers together and
absolutely, and you can do it with your compliance clients. You don't have to go out and get new clients.
Right.
A lot of the accountants say, "Oh, my clients can't afford advisory." Okay, we'll find a way where it doesn't cost you very much money and doesn't take you much time, and bring value to those people. And then when you've proven that you've got your confidence, because that's the biggest problem, right? Confidence. So when you're confident that you can facilitate with your clients, then you can start to grow an external group that is more advisory client based, and morph into that. But yeah, masterminding is a brilliant thing. It was invented in 1937 by Napoleon Hill. He wrote Think and Grow Rich. Died a very poor man, ironically, but really great idea and transformational. And yeah, as you go back to saying, if you can facilitate that, they will be forever grateful.
Do you think that there is actually going to be room for the traditional accountant in 5, 10? Just hearing both of you speak, it seems like such a no-brainer, really, to want something a little bit more, particularly with solopreneurs.
That's a very dangerous question.
I mean, I'll be honest. I've got pretty strong views on this, and I'll be amazed if there's any viable business for anybody running a compliance-based practice in a few years' time, because already what we've witnessed in the last few years is, the old days of the somebody taking a shoebox full of receipts and the accountant doing the magic work to turn it into numbers. Well, there's no such magic trick anymore, because people are on cloud-based systems, digital workflows. In most cases, the submission for tax and statutory accounts can pretty much be done on the press of a button. So I don't think the mystique of the compliance stuff is what it used to be. If it ever was much of a value add service, there was at least a mystique associated with it. So I think that's disappearing. My personal, and I've got no basis to say it other than common sense, but my personal sort of observation is that if every aspect of our life is going online and becoming digital, and we've witnessed that with our financial transactions, given all the challenges governments face, I mean, it doesn't take Einstein to work out that somebody somewhere is eventually going to say, if your accounting records are digital and if you can do quarterly VAT returns and you don't have a complicated business, guess what? We're going to estimate your corporation tax or whatever to be whatever it is. And if you really want to employ an accountant, do a true up at the end of the year and pay them, and you'll probably find 9 out of 10 cases people just wouldn't find it's worth it, because most of their income and expenses are not going to be so complex that there's much room to pay much to an accountant. Now, I'm not saying there'll be no role for an accountant doing compliance, but you can just see that the role is going to be very limited, because the value you're adding is very limited. And we're already in that world, I would argue.
We're seeing the suppliers, Xero and QuickBooks, are marketing to the end business owner. Yeah,
Oh, I
so
didn't realise that.
It's on mainstream TV.
It's on mainstream TV. Get your Xero account.
Goodness.
So it's not, we don't even have to go through the accountant to work out what's going on in our books. And I've had many accountants that have not educated me around the numbers, and because I'm hungry to know them, I've taught myself, and I'm now telling my accountant how to give me advisory, and I'm double checking that to make sure I'm compliant, but I'm coming up with the advisory ideas. So this is really interesting, because I wouldn't say I'm the best business owner in the world, but if I'm coming up with my own advice because my accountant isn't giving me the advice before I ask the question, then at some point I'm going to go to the advisor that understands the numbers, not the accountant that doesn't understand advisory.
But I think it's a natural evolution in business anyway, right? Because obviously what tends to happen is things start off with expertise that's hard to, typically accounting exams were difficult, took many years, etc. So there was a barrier to entry and an expertise that took some time to acquire. So not surprisingly, that meant that the fees would also be reasonable. But if you've now got that in the workflows that we're talking about with some of these cloud-based accounting systems, and if you've got AI, frankly, most accounting processes are from a computer programming perspective are very simple yes, no, if then type workflows. They're not really things that require a lot of artificial intelligence. So of course, that's going to then drive where things go. And I think we've already seen over the last few years the first sort of change. The first element of that transition was accounting records becoming digital, which we're now seeing as pretty much mainstream. It's the way it's always regarded as being should be done. The other thing we saw was offshoring and outsourcing, and that sort of now sort of moved on. And now even those offshore and outsource service providers are talking about we're automating and we're using agents and we're using, for example, automated invoice capture. So you don't need somebody sitting anywhere to do anything. You just send it to an email address and it's in your system.
Yeah.
So I think the days of somebody thinking that they're going to have a very profitable and high growth and rewarding practice on the back of compliance are pretty much numbered. But that's just,
Excuse the pun, pretty much numbered.
Numbered, yes.
No, I 100% agree. I think it's really sad. I remember sitting in school and they said, oh, you need to be able to do maths in your head. You can't use a calculator because you'll never have a calculator in your pocket. And now we've got a whole blooming computer in our pocket, right? Don't trust where we're at. We can't imagine where we're going. Always plan for the worst and hope for the best. And the worst is that in 5 years' time, accountants are going to be obsolete. So planning for the best is kind of become the advisor.
I love that. I think for a note to end on, although I think that was potentially the perfect final sentence. So, what would be for one if there's going to be one takeaway for any finance professional or accountant looking to upskill and become an advisor, or who just having listened to this conversation think, oh, this clearly is something I need to be doing? What would be your one takeaway for them both?
I know you're scared. Basically, every single accountant I've spoken to is scared. However, having worked with hundreds of you now, don't worry, you're sitting on so much value. We just need to uncover it. Because if we leave it sat inside you, I can't remember who said it was, you'll die with the music inside you. And you just can't do that because you have the magic. It's your fear that's keeping you play small. And we're not pushing you to do it for our gain. We want you to do it so that you can win and you can change the economy. And it's the only thing stopping you is fear. You like the comfort of what you're doing. And for the brave, there is fortune for everyone.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I definitely would say that it's a pretty much a once in a lifetime opportunity for the more proactive. And it's ironic, virtually every accountant would say they're a proactive business advisor, and yet in practice, very few are.
Especially on their website.
Absolutely. So, but if you can genuinely be that, then I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So that's the first thing. But the thing I would say is, take that first step, that don't sort of procrastinate, don't put it off, because it's never, yesterday was the best time, now's the next best time, tomorrow never comes, is that's the cliche. But do that, and start with the things that actually aren't as difficult as maybe you might think. And the simple thing that you can do is talk to your clients and work out what you're doing for those top quartile clients that you enjoy working with, and that's the secret sauce.
Yeah.
What a note to end on. Thank you so much, Chanel and Amanda. I've absolutely loved this episode. So many words of wisdom for accountants and small businesses alike. So thank you both so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.